discomfort breeds growth. If you don't know how to tolerate the discomfort, how do you expect to grow? How do you expect your clients to grow? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Not Another Mindset Show. Today, we have, I want to say it's a hot topic, but I think it's only a hot topic because I have been hearing about it so much with my students, whether it's in the Health Mindset Coaching Certification Level 1 or Level 2 or our alumni group or in my mentorship program. And it's this idea of discomfort or distress tolerance. And I think another way of kind of looking at it is just the idea of resilience and sitting with uncomfortable feelings or getting through a difficult situation because you know that it's still going to allow you to get closer to your goals. So the reality is, and I think we all know this, is that clients don't struggle because they don't know what to do. Especially those of you who are coaches to these clients. Most of the time, you are quite literally telling them what to do. That's not the problem. And in fact, this is kind of the question that got me on my journey and got me to where I am today, is because I was becoming so aware as a health and fitness coach that people know they need to eat healthy. People know they need to exercise, but they're still not doing it. There's something else going on beneath the surface here. And they're not struggling because they don't know what to do. They're struggling a lot of the time simply because they can't tolerate the discomfort that comes with doing the thing. So when I say discomfort, it could be effort, it could be uncertainty, emotions, cravings, boredom, imperfect conditions, wrenches getting thrown in your schedule, into your day. Coaching is really the perfect environment to help people start building this skill of getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. But of course, as a coach, you're going to need to know how to actually implement those strategies with your clients, build the skills in order to be able to do that with your clients. And that's what I'm hoping this episode helps you with today. Okay. Where are we going to start here? Got my little outline ready. We're going to get into some research around this stuff, which, to be honest, I am not a discomfort or distress tolerance or resilience expert. I did have to go find some research and deduce it down into some specific talking points that are going to make sense for you as a coach or for yourself if this is something that you're working on with yourself. So why does this even really matter in the first place? I think we all at face value can understand the importance of getting through uncomfortable situations if it's going to get you closer to your goals. But what it can show up as is overwhelm, decision fatigue, falling off track, perfectionism, fear of judgment, quitting when progress feels slow. I think we've all seen that, been there. Avoiding hard tasks. Think about your clients, or honestly, think about yourself, and how often are those feelings of, I just wasn't motivated? How often are those moments actually just, I couldn't tolerate the discomfort that came with that? So, first thing we're going to get into here is some research that ties in this idea of discomfort tolerance to self-efficacy. If you've been around, if you're a student of mine, if you've been listening to the podcast, consuming my Instagram content, any of that, you've heard me mention self-efficacy before, because this is a really powerful, if not one of the most powerful drivers of behavior change. And it's essentially this idea that I can handle this. I can make it through this obstacle or this challenge and continue to work on the behavior I'm trying to change, the goal I'm trying to achieve, etc. So there is decades of research from Albert Bandura. He's kind of like the father of self-efficacy, and also people who trained underneath him, and hundreds of follow-up studies on those studies. And those studies really show that the top predictor of whether someone sticks with a hard behavior or not is self-efficacy. So important, right? Self-efficacy is important. We have determined that. The best way to develop self-efficacy is mastery experiences. And what I mean by mastery experiences is essentially achieving success, seeing success under challenging conditions where success isn't really easy and there is discomfort required to get there. Those are mastery experiences. And these kinds of wins, these kinds of successes, they are what build self-efficacy more so than with successes that feel easy. If something is easy for you to do and be successful at, you won't be building very much self-efficacy in the process. And this is why discomfort tolerance itself is such a critical skill, because people who believe they can handle discomfort are the ones who actually can handle it, which when now I say that out loud, we really are talking about mindset here too. If you believe I can do this even in the face of obstacles and hardship and discomfort and stress and effort and all of this, chances are you're going to be able to handle those things. And that's having a growth mindset, is believing that you're capable, that you can change, that you can make improvements. So self-efficacy and growth mindset go hand in hand. That is something we do know from research. I actually, a lot of the research that I did during my PhD did center around that, and how having a growth mindset about fitness, for example, can lead to you having more fitness self-efficacy and therefore exercise more frequently. So some of the research I want to share here is honestly relatively old. We're talking 1997. This is Albert Bandura again. And the key findings from a lot of his research is that success under challenging conditions increases self-efficacy more than success under easy conditions, kind of what we were talking about before. And he explicitly states that difficult successes build stronger self-efficacy beliefs than anything easy. I actually have a quote from him here. Successes achieved under conditions of adversity carry greater efficacy value than successes achieved under easy circumstances. So it's not just success that matters. It's success with friction, really. When people overcome something that they believed would be hard or was hard for them in the moment, the psychological impact on their confidence is so much greater. So other pieces of research, this is actually from researcher last name Feltz from 1982. He found that people who succeeded at tasks framed as challenging showed higher increases in self-efficacy and lower avoidance for future tasks. So we can see here where makes sense, right? Like when we're doing hard things and we're proving to ourselves that we can do hard things and we're building this self-efficacy and a growth mindset over time, when we're presented with more hard things, our first thought is not, I can't do that. It's, I've been able to do this before. I bet I could do it again. So that's some pieces of kind of tying discomfort tolerance to this really important behavior change concept of self-efficacy. But we also can't talk about discomfort tolerance, I don't think, without talking about stress. Like it very much goes hand in hand. And that's kind of what I was seeing when I was doing some research review work for this podcast episode. And I've mentioned in previous podcasts about stress and self-control and the connection there. If you have been a student inside HMCC, we have an entire module, an entire week that is dedicated to learning about how stress and self-control are somewhat enemies of each other. So we could see maybe where having a little bit more tolerance for stressful situations would then help us have more self-control in those situations. So a big part of this is learning to reframe stress as something that it's not so bad and this like terrible thing that we need to avoid, but instead to see stress as something that maybe we can harness for our benefit, which I know can seem kind of backwards, but if you can get to the point where you feel a stressful situation coming on or you're in it right now, and you're thinking, okay, this is going to get me somewhere. I'm going to learn something. This is challenging me. It's going to stretch my thinking or my skill set. It's going to make me better. There's something good on the other side of this. Just imagine what that would do for your ability to tolerate it in the moment and also get all of that good stuff out of it. So I have some research here, and just so you guys know too, in the show notes, all of the citations from the research that I am talking about will be available. So if you're a nerd like me and you want to dive into the studies even further, they are available to you in the show notes. Some research I want to point to here starts with this 2010 study. They found that when students were taught to view stress as energy that helps performance, they performed significantly better on GRE style math tests and reported less anxiety. So in this study, participants were taught that physiological stress, so things like sweaty palms or a racing heart, is a resource, not a threat. So the people in the study were taught this, and they were students. And this reinterpretation is what led to better performance on the GRE compared to those in the control condition who were not taught this and taught how to make this reinterpretation or reframe. They also showed more adaptive cardiovascular responses, meaning that their bodies actually handled stress better. And this stuff is so cool to me because it's literally showing us how our beliefs and the way that we think actually manifests as changes physiologically. We're talking cardiovascular responses here. And we also see in this research how viewing stress as helpful can just increase your ability to stay persistent under pressure. So one thing I want to point out here is that this is a learned skill. It's a reframe. It's a reinterpretation. It's a change in the way that you view or how you believe stress to be good versus bad. And that can make all of the difference in performance, persistence, cardiovascular responses. I mean, how cool. Some other research I have here is from Aaliyah Crum. And I have known of her. I've met her one time and I've known her for a long time because she runs the Mind and Body Lab at Stanford, and being in the Mindset Lab at NC State, her lab and the lab that I worked in during my PhD had a lot of overlap. My PhD advisor has done work with her specifically. She came over to my poster one time at a conference and it was really cool. Wow, I am really letting my nerdy flag fly right now. But I talk about her work a lot in my content and in HMCC because number one, it's just so freaking cool. And it showcases exactly what I'm talking about here. People who adopt a stress is enhancing mindset, so sort of having more of a growth mindset about stress, that it can do something for you, that it's productive, those people show greater persistence during challenging tasks, experience emotional emotional exhaustion, have more adaptive hormone profiles, so we're talking like cortisol reactivity. They also demonstrate higher work performance and fewer negative health symptoms. Okay, that was like 10 positive things that come out of simply believing that stress is enhancing versus the opposite, which would be stress is debilitating. So what all of this tells us is that stress might not be the actual problem, but rather the interpretation of stress is the problem. And when clients learn to interpret stress and discomfort as activation rather than danger, their ability to stick with a behavior is going to increase big time. And a lot of these studies that I just walked you through do support that. Okay, last piece of research stuff that I want to get into is acceptance commitment therapy and psychological flexibility. So what the research calls psychological flexibility, which I need to do a full episode on psychological flexibility because it's so important. Everything that I talk about is important, okay? But this is one of the more important things because it is kind of like an overarching like umbrella type of situation. So I'll definitely, in the next couple episodes or so, I'll make sure that there's a full episode on this. But what the research calls psychological flexibility is basically discomfort tolerance. Like we're kind of talking about the same thing here. It's the ability to feel stress or cravings or boredom or discomfort or fear, anxiety, and still take action that aligns with your goals. So, regardless of these negative feelings that you're experiencing, you're able to say, okay, I am experiencing this, but it doesn't have anything to do with the actions that I'm taking next. And across many, many studies in this area, this idea of psychological flexibility shows up as one of the most powerful predictors of successful behavior change. Research points to better weight loss outcomes. Hello. Many of you will find interest in that, given your health and fitness coaches. Better adherence, sticking to the plan. Better emotional regulation, and better long-term maintenance. This is what we see comes out of more psychological flexibility, more discomfort tolerance. And I have a quote here from, kind of speaking of all the fathers today, the father of acceptance commitment therapy. He says, efforts to control or avoid discomfort often undermine long-term values, whereas acceptance facilitates sustained change. So I talk about acceptance commitment coaching based tools a lot in both HMCC level 1 and 2, but a big part of this is the acceptance piece is not just a fixed mindset coded acceptance, like, oh, I'm just stuck this way type of acceptance, but more so like, okay, I'm having this experience and I accept that, but that doesn't mean that I can't now act in alignment with my values and my goals and the things that I want to do. So all that said, we talked about kind of different areas of the research that points to the importance of being able to get comfortable with the uncomfortable and tolerate discomfort better. There are, what I kind of have come up with here, 3 different types of discomfort that clients typically struggle with. And that is emotional discomfort. So again, thinking like anxiety, fear, frustration, guilt, shame, boredom, which then can lead to avoidance of things because it's uncomfortable, spiraling, emotional eating, or, just quitting entirely. So that's emotional discomfort. We also have cognitive discomfort. Your classic uncertainty, decision fatigue, overthinking, cognitive overload that leads to freezing or procrastination or perfectionism. That would be more in this category of cognitive discomfort. And the third one is physical or behavioral discomfort. So having to put effort forth, that's not comfortable. Cravings, hunger waves, fatigue, soreness from your workouts, unfamiliar routines. And this can lead to what we would want to call lack of motivation, but the reality is just like not being able to tolerate the discomfort, or skipping the gym, skipping anything, or maybe just like overcompensation in other areas because of this physical or behavioral discomfort. So knowing that those are kind of like the 3 categories of discomfort that your clients could experience, I would love for you to think about maybe certain clients that you're working with, or maybe even think about yourself. Where might that client that you have who is struggling to stay consistent, stick to the plan, all of that stuff, see success, see progress, where might their quote unquote lack of motivation actually just be emotional, cognitive, or physical behavioral discomfort? Noodle on that for a second, because now we're going to talk about some strategies that you can use in your coaching practices. And I've got 4 of them for you. The first one is to normalize the discomfort. The idea with this is that we're trying to just reduce the perception that the discomfort is a threat, because that's what it feels like in our bodies, and instead increase willingness to do the thing anyway. Discomfort is typically just a sign that something is new rather than there's actually something wrong. And I think that conversation is a really powerful one to normalize discomfort with your clients, and to talk about how it's just hard because it's new, that hard does not equal wrong or bad. And the more we can normalize struggle and discomfort as a predictable part of behavior change rather than like a personal flaw, the better. And we want to help clients that then shift from this is a threatening thing, this is an uncomfortable thing that I need to avoid, to, oh, this is a challenge that I can rise to and I can get through and get to the other side and see more success. That's what we're really trying to do here. So I do have like a little client scenario and that I wrote down for you guys. Let's say your client says, I don't know why this feels so hard. It shouldn't be this hard. Which there's a lot of directions I could go with this from like a mindset perspective. But I also know that this is a common belief, whether it's your clients or yourself, like thinking maybe in your business. How often have you thought to yourself, oh, this just seems so easy for everybody else. It shouldn't be so hard for me. So a response that you could give to your client who is saying something like this is, again, this is hard because it's new. This is what the process looks like for everybody. It's hard for everybody. It will get easier with time. This has nothing to do with your capabilities. So you can notice here that we are also cultivating a growth mindset while we are normalizing discomfort. It's almost like everything comes back to mindset or something. Okay. Number 2 is stress reappraisal. So kind of what I was talking about with Aaliyah Crumb's work and the difference between seeing stress as enhancing versus seeing stress as debilitating, and just generally your beliefs around stress being good versus bad. We want to teach clients to interpret the sensations that come with stress as readiness for a challenge, or like activating. I like that word for this. Like you're activating your body to get prepared for what's in front of you. Like that's what that stress response is, rather than immediately seeing it as like something bad. It's actually something adaptive. So I wrote here too, it's like a quote that you could honestly maybe even use as a mantra. Like this isn't anxiety. It's my body gearing up. So client scenario here is your client might say, my heart was racing when I stepped into the gym, so I left. Like we have a lot of clients who are super newbies to going into a gym, and like absolutely, it's like a lot of gyms can be frightening if you've never been in there before. You don't know how the machines work. You don't want to look stupid. You've got these big muscly guys walking around and grunting and yelling things. Absolutely. But this is where you could then say your heart wasn't warning you, as she said, or he said, whoever your client is, your heart wasn't warning you because they said my heart was racing. It was preparing you. That activation can actually help with focus and strength. So you see in this situation, it's okay, this is the physical sensation you were having. It was like a stressful situation. It was uncomfortable. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing that you need to avoid. Instead, that could actually help you with your workout because it's your body's getting prepared and it's in this very alert state that would be really good for your strength training routine. So then we're helping the client reframe those like pre-workout jitters as performance energy rather than it being this detrimental thing, a warning sign that is telling you need to leave and not do this workout after all. All right, number 3, urge surfing. I love me a good urge surf. Also known as kind of like riding the wave. This is something that I teach inside HMCC when we talk about acceptance commitment therapy. I believe it's in level 2. Also, I need you guys to know that I'm saying acceptance commitment therapy because that's where this stuff, a lot of stuff that I've talked about so far that's in that realm comes from. But we are not therapists as coaches, and we do draw the line. I have a whole freaking podcast episode on drawing the line as coaches versus getting into the waters of where you shouldn't be as a therapist. But just because it comes from acceptance commitment therapy does not mean it's not something. There aren't tools or theories or just concepts inside of it that we can't translate into coaching practices. So with that said, urge surfing is basically a mindfulness technique. And the goal is to reduce reactivity in situations where you're feeling uncomfortable and you want to fix it or do something in order to fix it. And you kind of need to like sit in your hands in the moment. So we want to increase tolerance for things like cravings or impulses or emotional situations. And urge surfing can help you do that. So the way we can think about it is, again, kind of like riding a wave. You're riding the wave of the urge and kind of learning to sit with it rather than try to immediately get rid of it. We're riding, not getting rid of. And the truth is, cravings can come and go within like a 90-second period. And ultimately, it's not that hard to just wait 90 seconds, but it can feel difficult in the moment and feel like there's no other option. So the skill here is to observe the feeling that you have, to breathe, take a second, be mindful, ride the wave of that discomfort, and ultimately let it pass. I know that sounds like easier said and done, but the reality is avoiding or resisting cravings or temptation is only going to increase those sensations. It's not going to actually help you work through it. So, client scenario here. Let's say your client says, when I have the urge to snack, it feels uncontrollable. And a response that could be used here is, let's practice riding the wave of the urge next time. Instead of acting or resisting, just observe the urge like a wave rising and falling. You can kind of walk them through the process that I was describing before. So the goal would be that you have this client maybe sit through a craving by timing it for those 90 seconds. And then over time, they will learn that it's not permanent. It's actually very, very short term. And then that increases the confidence to get through it next time and the ability to tolerate the discomfort. All right. Last strategy I have for you is sort of like a form of exposure therapy. And actually, we did talk about this on one of the HMCC calls, and that's what got my brain turning in the direction of like, this, I need to do a whole podcast episode on this. And the idea is that we're exposing ourselves or helping our clients get more exposure to discomfort, sort of like in a ladder fashion. So you start small and increase the challenge over time, increase the ability to tolerate the discomfort. It's like gym progression, but for emotional or cognitive discomfort. So that said, a scenario here, let's say you have a client who says, I get too anxious to go to the gym. So a way to kind of exposure therapy ladder this would be to allow them to just go and sit in the parking lot. So if they're not even getting to the gym, let's start there. Exposure therapy rung on the ladder, number one step on the ladder is to just go to the gym and sit in the parking lot. And then once we can tolerate that discomfort, it could move to walk inside the gym, go into the locker room. And then if you're still feeling too overwhelmed, you can leave. But like we got there, right? And then from there, it could be, do one exercise or walk on the treadmill. Then from there, it could be stay for 15 minutes. Do whatever you want for 15 minutes. And then, the progression could go on until we're getting to the point of going to the gym and doing a full workout. Oh my gosh, I have one more strategy, and it's actually really important. I have 5. Surprise, we have a bonus strategy. Oh, you lucky guys. Okay, this one I am calling reflective debriefing. And I do really want to talk about this one. I don't want to skip it because this was also part of the conversation from the HMCC call that I was talking about and was actually the thing that I brought up when we were talking about discomfort tolerance. So like, again, part of the reason why I wanted to do this episode. So let's not skip it. The idea is that we want to reinforce learning from the discomfort so that we can increase future tolerance and generally increase confidence in these situations. So reflecting on uncomfortable situation, any uncomfortable situation can just consolidate the success that came from it. And you might be thinking like, where are we getting this success from in these uncomfortable situations? But the brain needs evidence in order to update beliefs. So if we're going through an uncomfortable time or talking to your client who gets anxious when she goes to the gym and starts to do some of these little pieces, like she maybe finally got to the gym and is walking on the treadmill, but then is leaving. So talking to your client about that and asking questions about how it felt to be uncomfortable, but still do it anyway. What kind of emotions would you attach to that? What came up for you? How are you feeling before, during, and after the event? So you can get to the point where this client will say, yeah, it was scary and I didn't like it in the moment, but afterwards I felt really accomplished. That piece, the accomplished piece. Like we want to hang on to that when we want to pull that out of our clients when they're going through these things. So we want to help clients essentially extract meaning from the discomfort that they just navigated rather than just brushing it under the rug or just telling them good job or okay, now on to the next step. We want to actually take the time to talk to them about the uncomfortable situation that they were just successfully able to go through and what that meant for them. Because the more we can tie that personal meaning, positive personal meaning to it, the more likely they are to be able to tolerate the uncomfortable situation in the future and be more successful. All right, the client scenario I have here is that client says, that workout was awful, but I did it. And you could respond, what does that tell you about your ability to handle discomfort? And maybe they come back and they're like, well, I guess it tells me that even if something's hard, I'm still capable of doing it anyway. Amazing. Lovely. Yes, we want more of that from our clients. Okay. Thing I want to kind of wrap up with here is coaching mistakes when it comes to discomfort tolerance. What this can look like is maybe rescuing your clients too quickly, interpreting the discomfort that your clients have as failure or that they're uncoachable, skipping the reflection part. Don't want to do that. Just brush it under the rug. Or overloading clients cognitively, because if they're already feeling uncomfortable about these behavior changes or the changes they have to make to their lifestyle, overloading them with more things and education and stuff is only going to make them more uncomfortable, and they have not yet got to the place where they can tolerate any of the discomfort, and you're already piling on more of it. Don't want to do that. And when I mentioned similarly, like rescuing clients too quickly is immediately providing solutions for them or telling them what to do all of the time, because if they can't get through the discomfort and prove to themselves that they can do it, remember the brain needs evidence, then it's going to be really hard for them to build this tolerance to the uncomfortable situations if you're just rescuing them all the time. Okay, all this to say, behavior change does not require eliminating discomfort, and I want that to be clear, but instead requires building the skills and the identity and the self-belief to actually move through it, get to the other side. And that's what can really make coaching so powerful. And this is what I train my students to do inside HMCC. It's what we're doing on this podcast. So much of it does boil back down to self-belief, tolerance for uncomfortable situations. I mean, I say all of the time, I feel like it's almost my tagline at this point, that discomfort breeds growth. But the like subtext to that is, if you don't know how to tolerate the discomfort, how do you expect to grow? How do you expect your clients to grow? So I hope this podcast was helpful. For all of those reasons, let me know if you would by leaving a 5-star review. It would make me so happy. And also, I give back to you every time you leave a review. If you leave a review and you write something nice, you're not just, hitting the little stars or whatever. Write something nice, maybe a takeaway from the podcast, something that you enjoy about it. I mean, you don't have to be nice if you don't want to, but it'd be great if you would. And when you do that, if you take a screenshot of your review and then put it into our review form, which is linked in every single episode's show notes, you have to take your screenshot and put it into the review form, and you will be maybe one of the lucky ones to get one of my free products delivered to you. So I have a whole host of DIY courses and programs for coaches, whether it's to upgrade your application forms and check-in forms with Transform Your Forms, to teach you the psychological marketing strategies to help you sign more clients. I got all kinds of stuff for you, and I want to give you one for free through these giveaways. And we do this every single month. Every single month, we pick someone who has submitted their review to that review form to get one of these programs for free. And fortunately for you, unfortunately for me, there's not a lot of people submitting their reviews. So your chances of winning are very high, my friend. So I would really appreciate it. And then I would really love to give back to you. And that is all I have for you today. And I will see you next week. Thanks so much for being here.